Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos. Leaving Etosha and heading for the Skeleton Coast, unbeknown to us, we had a nasty surprise waiting for us underneath the bonnet. So, on our final morning departure, the end of episode 2, in leaving Halali Camp this morning, my battery was completely dead. Now, last night we did a little bit of driving with the lights on, but literally only about 500 meters, and it could have been that. I think it's a faulty alternator. We've been push starting the car and it does run, but we tried to leave Halali Camp and drive towards Okakuyo in the hope that the battery would charge. But sadly it didn't. My electronics started going haywire and the entire vehicle started switching on and off, and it started jerking, and I thought, look, there's no ways we want to be caught in the middle of the park. It's 75 kilometers from Halali to Okakuyo, and what we don't want is to be stuck in the middle in the park where we can't get out of vehicle and we can't really do anything. So we quickly turned around and drove back about 1.5 kilometers back into Halali. So we've got to get hold of people in Ucho. We've got to do a tow service, possibly a flatbed, and get our vehicle to Ucho. But this is travel. This is what happens. Sometimes things happen with vehicles, they go wrong, and it's always good to be able to find out information. We were able to track down a towing service and information from tourist information from the Tracks4Africa guidebook and get hold of them. They gave us the correct number for the towing service in Ucho. Remember, they'll have to come into the park at Okakuyo and come all the way to Halali and take us all the way back out to Ucho, which I think is probably a good 200 kilometers. Towing services in these countries are hellishly expensive. You know, we were looking at about 8,500 rand for a towing service from Etosha to Ucho, which is about 190 kilometers. So if you need to be flatbedded out of a place in Namibia, you can always look at a minimum of about 6,000 to 8,000 rand just to get towed. It seems that the issue with the vehicle was just a dead battery. We thought it was the alternator, and which wouldn't have been that great because it's not easy to get alternators here in Namibia, especially for Suzuki Jimny. Given that we had to overnight in Ucho, we unfortunately had to skip our Skeleton Coast leg and proceed directly to Swakopmund to get back on track with our pre-booked accommodation. The fastest route was to take the M63 gravel road, then join the C33 tar road to Omaruru and down to Karibib, and then take the B2 highway all the way to Swakopmund. We had 3 days to explore Swakopmund and surrounds, so day 1 we decided to travel 131 kilometers north along the coast on the C34 Salt Road to Cape Cross Nature Reserve. The reserve is known as one of the largest colonies of Cape fur seal in the world. But first, we stopped at the very interesting and colourful Wlotzkatzbaken holiday settlement 33 kilometers north of Swakopmund. It smells absolutely repulsive. From the time you open the car door, all along the walkways, it is the most repulsive smell you can possibly ever imagine. And it's good footage, but luckily you can't see the smells on camera. Swakopmund is certainly one of Namibia's adventure playgrounds. The 25-kilometer dune belt along the coast between Swakop and Walvis Bay has several activities from camel expeditions to quad biking. One of the most interesting excursions is the Living Desert Tour. Highly experienced guides detect and describe a host of small reptiles that survive in this harsh environment.
See, there's his water storage. Yeah, look at that.
He runs really fast, okay?
The Moon landscape just outside Swakopmund is a must-see location. Permits can be purchased at the NWR offices in Swakopmund, and it's a short 34-kilometer drive on the C28 from Swakopmund Central. To be immersed deep in the Moon landscape, we booked ourselves into Goanikontes Oasis rest camp in the Swakop River Valley to capture the landscape and seek out the unique Welwitschia mirabilis plants. The unearthly landscape is any photographer's and filmmaker's dream. With all the filming and photography behind us, it was time for a little bit of R&R and camp life at our private campsite at Goanikontes Oasis.
Okay, so we at the Goanikontes Oasis at our very beautiful campsite, and I had bought some beef a couple of days ago, stewing beef for a curry. Very basic curry with some carrots and potatoes that we had left over. And something I've been dying to try on this trip is to make some rye bread. But we don't really have the right pot. We're supposed to have a sort of cast iron pot. But anyway, we're going to use this one of these cheap little heart pots. And Craig's made a fire.
After a good healthy breakfast the next morning at the restaurant, we were packed up and ready to set off to the biggest tourist attraction in Namibia, Sossusvlei. The planned route was to go back to Swakopmund for supplies, then take the B2 to Walvis Bay, then the C14 to Sesriem Canyon, across the Tropic of Capricorn to Solitaire for fuel, and continue on the C19 to Sesriem, a total distance of 385 kilometers on the worst roads in the country, due to their endless corrugations and soft sand patches. At least the final 12-kilometer section on the C27 to Sesriem has been tarred since 2021. As we know, drone flights are strictly prohibited in Sossusvlei and Deadvlei, but if you have deep enough pockets, there are other ways to see the dunes from above. For around 3,200 Rand per person, a 30-minute flight over Sossusvlei is an experience not to be missed. The newly built Dead Valley Lodge is situated inside the main Sesriem gates, so visitors to the lodge and Oshana campsites get access into Sossusvlei an hour earlier than the general public. Each campsite at Oshana Rest Camp has its own ablution, power points and a large shaded area, perfect for escaping the heat of the midday desert sun. Early the next morning at 6 a.m, we drove the 60-kilometer tar road down to Sossusvlei and prepared for the 5-kilometer deep sand trek to Deadvlei car park. Beating the crowds to Deadvlei should be a priority if you want footage and images of Deadvlei without any people. But, as we found out, there were still a few bigger loads of people before us already there on the dunes. So, just been waiting for a little bit of light so we can film. But we've deflated tires on the Jimny now that it's unladen. I've deflated them to about 0.7 of a bar. So usually 1 bar would be good for most 4x4s. But because the Jimny is so light and because I've got BF Goodrich KO2s, they're quite a hard tire. It's 65-kilometer drive down the tar to get to Sossusvlei. So the tires are nice and warm and drop the pressures right down. And we're going to go and take the 5-kilometer sand track to Deadvlei now. So let's see if we get stuck. So we cruised through the sand quite easily, and I used low range just for safety's sake, but probably didn't need to use low range. Just put it in low range and just went between third and fourth the whole way. It was pretty easy. The Jimny cruised through it, and now we're in Deadvlei, and we're taking the little 1.4 kilometer walk to the actual Deadvlei pan itself, which has always been a highlight of the Namibian trips for me and probably for most people. This particular pan dried up when there was a massive climate change about 1,000 years ago, and all these trees were cut off completely, and some of them were submerged in the dune, and literally over 1,000 years they dried out and almost petrified. They're not quite rock obviously, but they dried out to the point where they actually didn't rot. So they're standing here exactly as they did 1,000 years ago, and most of them now are exposed. And if you look at the dune, there's still some that are partially covered. So inside these big dunes could still be dozens of trees, and we'll only see those in a few thousand years when these dunes move on again. With the mid-morning crowds pouring in, it was time to leave Sossusvlei and head back to camp. Another great highlight of the Sossusvlei area is the Sesriem Canyon, situated 4 kilometers south of the main Sesriem Gate. The canyon is over 30 meters deep and approximately 1 kilometer in length. The canyon was formed over 2 million years ago when the then strong-flowing Tsaugab River cut its way through the sedimentary rock, creating this spectacular gorge. Seasonal rains bring water into the gorge, and some pools are found all year round.
So Craig and I have just entered the Sesriem Canyon. I've been very excited about seeing this place. As you arrive in the parking lot, you actually don't have a view of the canyon at all. It just looks like a rocky surface ahead of you. But then interestingly, you get to walk down into this unbelievable rocky canyon. I'm just going to turn around just so you get an idea of where we are at the moment.
any Sesriem campsite, you will find early risers. Queuing at the gate at 6 a.m. is an event that happens 365 days a year. For us, we took advantage of the early start and packed up ready for our journey south on the infamous C27 to Aus and the Desert Horse Inn at Klein Vista. The C27 is one of the worst roads in Namibia. With close to 340 kilometers of corrugations and sand patches ahead, we felt safe in the knowledge that the suspension upgrades to the Jimny and the BF Goodrich KO2 tyres could deal with anything the roads could throw at us. The preferable route south, as illustrated in the Namibia Self-Drive Guidebook, is to take the C19 to Montagu, then the C14 to Halmeringhausen, and eventually the C13 to Aus. This route, however, would not give us the opportunity to drive the D707, known as one of the most scenic roads in southern Namibia. It's important to note that the D707 is not suitable for motorcycles or non-4x4 vehicles. We encountered sections of over 4 kilometers of incredibly thick sand, and we had to engage four-wheel drive to avoid bedding down.
The world is yours to find and know. With every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for adventure.
The opportunity to stay in a lodge and have a superb meal and sleep in a comfortable bed was a welcome break from the many weeks of camp cooking and sleeping in tents. No disrespect to Kirsten's incredible cooking.
And I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be.
The feral horses of Karoo are always a special treat to see if you're in the Aus region.
I'm living free, living free, living free, and I was meant to be free, meant to be free.
Filling up with fuel and supplies at the new fuel station in Aus, we prepare for our next and final destination in Namibia, the mighty Fishriver Canyon, the second largest canyon in the world. The fastest route would be approximately 200 kilometers on the B4 highway. Then we'll take the C12 via Nauta Dam and then the C37 to Hobas Rest Camp, with a lunch stop and petrol stop at the famous Canyon Roadhouse. The best time to view the Fishriver Canyon is in the early morning, once the sunlight has had an opportunity to flood into the canyon. The Fishriver Canyon is approximately 160 kilometers long, up to 27 kilometers wide, and at its deepest over 550 meters deep. the canyon started forming about 350 million years ago, and the bedrock at the bottom of the canyon is an incredible 1.5 billion years old. So our travel plans for tomorrow would be to follow the C27 south until it joins the C10, and then head east along the C10, crossing over the B1 highway and continuing again with the C10 all the way to Karasburg. In Karasburg we'll stock up and we'll refuel, and then we're going to take this gravel road, the M21, right the way down through Warmbad, and then take the D206, which goes through some incredibly beautiful landscapes and comes out just before the Velloorsdrift Onseepkans border post. This is a very tiny little border post that will take us across into South Africa at Onseepkans, and then we've got a 50-kilometer road, which actually is one of the worst roads I've ever been on before. That's the R358 from Onseepkans to Pofadder. Incredibly corrugated, incredibly bad condition. Back on South African soil again, we needed to travel south back to Barrydale on the Route 62 before heading home to Stellenbosch. Our plan was to make our way through the Northern Cape via Kenhardt and Van Wyksvlei to Carnarvon for an overnight stop. The following day, we would travel on the R63 to Loxton and then the 381 gravel road to the Karoo National Park 5 kilometers outside Beaufort West. There, we would camp for our final 2 nights of this trip. Kirsten and I are on our third to last night of this incredible journey we've taken. As you would have seen from episode 2, which was the Cape to Etosha, and now on this episode 3, Etosha back to the Cape, we are now in Karoo National Park, just outside Beaufort West. So we are camping here for the final 2 nights camping, and then on the very final night we're in Montagu in a beautiful evening in a guest house. Suddenly, we were interrupted by a visitor. A beautiful, tame female kudu had wandered into our campsite. She is apparently a familiar visitor to the camp. A very interesting feature at the Karoo National Park is the fossil trail, easy access for visitors and a mere 400 meters long. The Karoo National Park is situated in the Karoo Basin with an impressive fossil record covering a period of 190 to 250 million years. The fossil trail showcases real fossils dating back 250 million years, before climatic and geological activity changed the landscape permanently.
So we're about halfway through the fossil trail at the Karoo National Park, and it is incredibly interesting to read these little signboards and then to see these fossil specimens under these or in these glass enclosures, just describing their jaws and what they ate and what they foraged for and whether they were herbivores or carnivores. Just such a lovely feature of this park.
The next morning, we took a game drive into the national park to see if our luck might change and we could perhaps see one of the 10 resident lions, or any cat for that matter. Although we didn't have any sightings of the lions, we still enjoyed the Karoo landscapes and the selection of animals we did encounter. The Karoo National Park experience was one we won't forget. In fact, we're thinking of coming back for a longer stay in the near future. It was time for Kirsten and I to wrap up our long 38-day journey and head back through the Western Cape to Montagu for our final night in the luxurious Montagu Vines Guesthouse. A well-deserved piece of luxury to cap off our incredible overlanding trip to Etosha. In traditional style, we took the adventurous route through Seveweekspoort to give us the last taste of gravel before joining the Route 62 to Montagu.
Hi everyone, we are at the very, very beautiful Montagu Vines in Montagu in the Klein Karoo, and we want to just thank everyone for following us on our incredible journey to Etosha and back to the Cape. It's been a wonderful adventure. We appreciate your support a great deal.
Yes, thanks. You know, for me as a professional route planner, I spend my life planning routes and plotting the GPS tracks. And this has been such a different journey for us because we haven't used a GPS to plan this entire trip. We use the Tracks4Africa guide app, we use the Tracks4Africa paper map and the Tracks4Africa guide book for all the information and the routes and the accommodation that we acquired along the way. So it's been a really interesting exercise for me as well to plan such a long trip to Etosha and back to Cape, purely using these very easy tools. And this shows that anyone, whether you have a fully equipped rig or whether you're doing micro overlanding like we do in a little Jimny, or even whether you have a normal car. A lot of these kind of journeys are possible with basic navigation, but there's a little bit of vehicle prep that you would need, especially if you're going to do lots of gravel and if you're going to do Namibia. So thanks very much for joining us, and we're going to give you a little bit of an insight now to the next episode, which is going to be focused on the hiking trails and mountain biking trails in De Hoop Nature Reserve. This is an amazing place along the Western Cape coastline where you can hike and bike in amongst massive herds of eland and zebra. It's an incredibly beautiful area, and we're going to share some of those visuals with you right now. So join us on the next episode. We'll see you soon.